how could it be that the hostages are being fed well, but there's no food in Gaza? Which one is it? How could it be that you're calling to globalize the Intifada, which is calling for a violent uprising, and you're also calling for ceasefire now? I've maybe stood out because I'm not playing the political correctness game, and I'm just speaking the truth.
Now, in 2018, your brother Ari was murdered by a Palestinian terrorist at the Gush Etzion junction. What was your first reaction when you heard that he would be let out?
A punch to the gut. Human rights activists fighting for the Palestinian people are the very people who won't listen to the Palestinian people.
What approaches do you think could be used to engage the so-called TikTok generation?
We were hated when we were, not white enough in Germany. Now we're hated because we're too white. We were hated when we were poor. We were hated when we were rich. We were hated because we were stateless. Now we're hated because we have a state. The hatred of the Jew is the oldest hatred in the world, and it is completely irrational.
Hillel Fuld is a pro-Israel influencer. He's also a tech advisor and a vlogger, a marketer and a speaker whom I had the privilege of interviewing just after the most recent wave of hostages were released from Gaza. At the moment, there are still 59 hostages being held in captivity, and Fuld talks a lot online about them, the war, and his own personal family experience with terrorism. His opinions are straightforward and unapologetic, which led to a fascinating conversation, which I hope you enjoy.
How do you balance your life pre-October 7th and your life post-October 7th?
I don't. I shut down my life pre-October 7th. On October 7th, I shut down my multi-million-dollar consulting business, and I refocused all my energy and resources on defending Israel online. So everything I've done for the last 15 years professionally has shut down, and it's been very gratifying for my soul and for the state of Israel. Not so gratifying for my bank account, but it is what it is.
I was going to say, we're seeing not a lot, but some Jewish influencers, and I don't understand how they can do that full time. Can you take us through, first of all, how it's become feasible?
It's not. Theoretically speaking, I should be starving on the street. But the truth is that God has literally given me a head nod and said, I got you, because he sent me actual angels who are supporting and who are very supportive and who help, whether it's companies that I was not looking to engage with because I wasn't doing business, who basically said, take our money, or just people who've been very supportive throughout the war. So, logically speaking, this is not sustainable, but God has done his thing.
And I'm assuming that you're able to do that because you've built a large following, because of not only the tech life that you've had, but also because of your takes on the war have garnered a lot of attention. Can you talk about how you've gotten attention and how you've dealt with it, and how you put together some really concise perspectives?
Yeah, I think the guiding principle for me has been truth. Just speaking the truth, which should be trivial and obvious. Unfortunately, in the world of post-truth, where truth is not only not popular, it's actually looked down upon. I've maybe stood out because I'm not playing the political correctness game, and I'm just speaking the truth. And I think that the world is starting to swing back, and I think many people do appreciate the factual history and everything that led up to the Middle East conflict. Without emotion, without profanity, without name calling, just straight up, here's the history, here's what Zionism means, and just straight to the point without expressing even my opinion, just giving the facts as they are.
Now, in 2018, your brother Ari was murdered by a Palestinian terrorist at the Gush Etzion junction. Can you talk to us a little bit about that and tell us how that has impacted you?
So we're 5 brothers. Ari was the one right above me in the lineup, and he was walking 6.5 years ago in a town called Efrat, or the Gush Etzion junction, like you said, outside of Jerusalem. Just to be clear, this is 10 minutes outside of Jerusalem. Those that think he was some extremist settler or settling in the middle of Arab lands, we're talking 10 minutes out of the capital of Israel. And a Palestinian kid, and again, important to emphasize, he wasn't a Hamas terrorist, he wasn't oppressed, he wasn't occupied, he was living in Israel, an affluent life, he lacked nothing. But he woke up that morning and decided today's a good day to murder a Jew. And so Ari was shopping, and he came from behind and stabbed him in the neck, and he got lucky because he got him in the main artery, at which point Ari was clinically dead, but somehow miraculously was able to chase down the terrorist and shoot him right before he was about to murder his next victim. Ari then collapsed and died, and the terrorist didn't die, but Ari prevented him from murdering the next victim, by the way, who was a woman named Hillel, who had a falafel stand, and she had just served the terrorist a falafel. obviously not knowing that he's a terrorist. And the terrorist was then inches away from her. Ari shot him, and he has since become a national hero of the state of Israel. But this terrorist went to Israeli prison for life and was just let out in the hostage deal. So that's it's been a rough one.
What was your first reaction when you heard that he would be let out? I can only imagine how difficult that was to know that he would be free.
Yeah, I mean, no, it's terrible. Obviously, a punch to the gut, but it's a very complicated thing because on the one hand, obviously on a personal level, terrible tragedy, and it's devastating that this kid is going to walk free. On the other hand, in a way, Ari indirectly brought about the situation that these poor hostages are getting to be reunited with their families. So it's kind of like this cognitive dissonance, like where we're like, on the one hand, terrible tragedy, on the other hand, a source of pride, which is, by the way, something that we feel in general about Ari. Obviously on a personal level, we miss him and it's terrible tragedy. On the other hand, he's a national hero of the state of Israel. I mean, there's nothing, more, a bigger source of pride than that. And even more so, I think this is something that anyone who lives in Israel experiences, right? I think that, on the one hand, we're living in miraculous times in an unbelievable country. On the other hand, we're in a constant state of battle and war and terror. And so it's, anyone who lives here understands that conflict is just a constant thing. And so with Ari and that terrorist getting out, it's terrible and it's also beautiful.
What do you want people to understand, especially Americans, especially protesters, about the fact that Israel is trading these hostages for terrorists, and sometimes they're even calling them children, but they're obviously terrorists?
Yeah, I think that the world has lost, they're lost their moral compass. I think we've lost the plot. Making that comparison is absurd, absolutely absurd, but it doesn't surprise anyone because you look at opinions about this conflict, and not only are they ridiculous and literally made up out of thin air, but you don't even have to know anything about the conflict or about history. All you got to do is look at the narrative of the anti-Israel crowd, and you could look at their narrative and you realize they're contradicting themselves. How could it be that the hostages are being fed well, but there's no food in Gaza? Which one is it? How could it be that you're calling to globalize the Intifada, which is calling for a violent uprising, and you're also calling for ceasefire now? Can't be, right? So how do you call and chant from the river to the sea, which literally means the complete deletion, erasure of Israel from the map, and then the same breath call for a two-state solution? Which one is it? So you don't have to be a genius or a rocket scientist or even a historian, or even you don't have to be knowledgeable about the conflict. You just have to use a brain, and you have to use your third grade logic, and you'll realize that they are constantly contradicting themselves. I mean, you can't tell me that you're a refugee in Gaza living in an open air prison, but when you're offered to leave and go to a safer place, you complain that you're being kicked off your land. If it's your land, then you can't be a refugee. But again, just nonstop contradictions. And the whole thing is just based on one big historical fabrication that Israel occupied some Arab-Palestinian state that never existed in the history of the world. Yasser Arafat founded the PLO, the Palestinian Liberation Organization, in 1964. Yasser Arafat was born in Cairo. He was Egyptian, as are all the Palestinians. The people that call themselves Palestinians are Egyptian and Jordanian. There was never an Arab-Palestinian state in the history of the world. And anybody who's watching this and questions that fact, tell me when it was established. Tell me what the currency was or what the national anthem was, or name me one single Palestinian leader. Because apparently, this is what they say, the Palestinians have this rich history in the region for thousands of years. Name me one Palestinian leader, one, before Yasser Arafat. Doesn't exist. Why doesn't it exist? How do we have coins that say Palestine on them, and right alongside the word Palestine they say Eretz Yisrael, the land of Israel? Palestine was Israel. This is history. These are facts. This is, anybody who says otherwise is just straight up lying. And some people are just ignorant, but open a book, a history book, open Google. Like it's so ridiculous how people believe just, again, made up stuff out of thin air. There's just no basis to it whatsoever. It's not like they're stretching the truth. These are made up things that the world believes. It's wild.
Do you think that these are conscious lies, or that people just don't know any better?
It's a mixture. I think there are people who, form their opinion from TikTok, and there are many people like that who are just ignorant and deeply indoctrinated. And there are people who, their hatred of Jews just drives them and blinds them to reality. And I think that, when people say the oppression of Palestinians, the occupation of Palestinians is what causes their terror, well, why don't you tell me what the disengagement was? What happened in 2005? Israel left Gaza. There was no occupation in Gaza. This is a fact. I'll show you videos of Israel forcefully removing 10,000 citizens of our own from Gaza. There was not a single Jew in Gaza on October 6th. So again, it's a lie. But you know what? Let's go even further than that. Even if you believe that, if you're telling me that the occupation is what causes terror, then if you're a third grader and you have basic human logic, you understand that if A causes B and you remove A, B should no longer exist. If occupation causes terror, then before the occupation, there should have been no terror. But in 1929, where there was no state of Israel, let alone any occupation, Arabs were massacring Jews in Hebron. Why were they massacring Jews? Why, for the future occupation? Why were they massacring Jews in 1929? So again, you don't have to know anything. You don't have to know anything. Just use your brain. If occupation causes terror, remove the occupation, there should be no terror. But there was, and there continues to be, and there was not a Jew in Gaza. So why did they attack on October 7th? Unprovoked, no justification. And anybody who says otherwise should know that they are justifying murder, rape, and pedophilia. And I'm sorry if that offends anyone, but that's the reality.
Do you think that the fear of being labeled an Islamophobe has influenced wanting to speak out about this? You're not saying anything that's not factual, but I feel like that there's a perception here that like, oh my gosh, if I say something that's controversial because what they're doing is controversial, then I'm going to be labeled an Islamophobe, but you're just calling it like it is.
Yeah, I mean, let's just talk about that term for a second. What does phobia mean? There's an actual definition. Phobia is an irrational fear of something. That's what phobia is. Now, you tell me how there's a religion with 1.8 billion members, out of which, if I'm being conservative, 10% are radicalized and dedicated to the destruction of the West. So that's 180 million people. And again, I'm being conservative. It's probably closer to 300 million, but let's go with 180 million. 180 million dedicated to my death, your death, and the death of Western civilization. How is a fear of that irrational? The fear of Islam is the most rational fear in the world. This is a deeply violent religion with clear instructions in the Quran to kill all infidels. And it's not like they're hiding it. They say it loud and clear. Look at imams in mosques. They say it loud and clear. And the irony of it all is that the West, or I should say the liberal/woke West, that is quote unquote human rights activists and fighting for the Palestinian people, are the very people who won't listen to the Palestinian people. Listen to what they're saying. There has never been a Palestinian leader in the history of the world that agreed that Israel has a right to exist. And you're telling them they want a two-state solution? No Palestinian leader wants a two-state solution. So if you're protecting them and you're standing up for their rights, maybe listen to what they're saying. Are they kids who aren't to be held accountable for their words and actions, or are they adults who deserve a state? If they're adults who deserve a state, they should be held accountable for the things they're saying. And if they're children, then they don't deserve a state. Make up your mind. So the whole thing is ridiculous. Islamophobia. What does that even mean? You know, we're drowning in the West. The Western civilization is being taken over from the inside across all pillars of society, whether it's judicial system, whether it's entertainment, whether it's academia, right? Whether it's the youth. I mean, they're clearly stating their goal and their mission is to take over Western civilization. And we, like idiots, are sticking our heads in the sand saying, no, don't tell me that. That's Islamophobia. But they're saying it. Oh, yeah, but they don't mean it. Are you kidding me right now? Someone who tells you they want to kill you, believe them. And they've shown time and time again that they're not just talking. I mean, even if you look at the protests on the streets of New York, these are violent, deeply violent, disturbed people, who many of which, by the way, came into the United States of America, some illegally and some, on a visa. And here they are declaring their desire to uproot Western civilization and destroy America. And somehow we think it's normal for them to stay in America. And when this guy, this Syrian dude, who's openly supporting terror, gets arrested, what happens? Americans go to the streets to protest on his behalf. We've lost our minds. Like, we've legitimately lost our minds.
I want to stay with this idea because I used to work in a newsroom in Philadelphia, and I'd love to know what your thoughts are. I don't work there anymore, but the news director at the time was very insistent on using anti-Semitism and Islamophobia in the same sentence. He would say, if you're worried about anti-Semitism, and they would always say anti-Semitism and Islamophobia.
It's ridiculous.
I'd love to know what you would have said to him.
I would say to him, look at the Jewish people and our history. The amount of Nobel Prizes we've won is completely disproportionate. Israel leads the way in cancer research. You cannot live a day in the modern world without using Israeli technology. The Jews have been nothing but a source of light in this world. You don't have terrorism being, carried out in the name of our religion. And without exception, every single terrorist attack in the world that has been carried out by a Muslim was accompanied by the chant Allah Akbar. So it's being done in the name of Islam. So don't tell me that the fear of Islam is irrational. It is the most rational thing in the world. However, the discrimination and hatred of Jews is the most irrational thing in the world. We've been nothing but a source of light in this world. What have we ever done to deserve this? We were hated when we were not white enough in Germany. Now we're hated because we're too white. We were hated when we were poor. We were hated when we were rich. We were hated because we were stateless. Now we're hated because we have a state. The hatred of the Jew is the oldest hatred in the world, and it is completely irrational. Makes no sense that a nation that's 0.25% of the global population in a country smaller than New Jersey dominates the news cycle as if we are the problem in the world when we are so insignificant in our size. And again, this tiny little country, this nation has just done incredible things to make the world a better place. So hating us is irrational. Hating, or I would say not hating, but being careful of radical Muslims who declare their desire to bring Sharia law is not irrational. It's the most rational thing in the world. So those two things are not the same. There is no equal sign between the two of them. One stands for peace in the world, and one stands for Sharia law in the world. And let's not get confused here.
I don't know if it's appropriate for me to ask this, but why do they hate us so much for millennia?
No, it's not. Why was that inappropriate? I think it's a great question.
Because it's like, I feel like we shouldn't, like it means that we're in a position to like answer it where we shouldn't be put on the defensive like that.
Well, according to Jewish scripture, this is anti-Semitism is built into the DNA of the world, right? Literally, it says halacha b'yadua. It's a known thing. Esav Senel Yaakov, that Gentiles are always going to hate Jews. It's just built in, but that doesn't satisfy me. I'm a rational person, and I want a rational explanation. So I think something that someone told me recently deeply resonated with me, and that is as follows. If you look throughout history, it's the same script that keeps repeating itself. There's an empire that grows and achieves world domination, and it's unparalleled power and influence. And the first thing that empire does is it throws morality out the window. It puts people to fight to the death in the Colosseum for the entertainment of the emperor. And it does many things that we're seeing in American society today, which I'm not going to go into, but many things that are deeply immoral. And as soon as morality goes out the window, the first thing they want to do is get rid of morality. Now, historically speaking, how does the world know it's immoral to murder? I mean, it wasn't immoral to murder in ancient times. The answer is the Bible, right? The Bible brought morality to the world. And so when you don't want morality shoved down your throat, you want to come after the creator of morality. Now, you can't kill God. So what do? You come after the messengers, right? You come after the people who brought the Torah to the world. You come after FedEx. You don't get your package. And so they come after us in every generation, and they say, we don't want your morality shoved down our throat. Get it out of my face. And so we, instead of standing our ground, we come to our hosts, and whether that's ancient Egypt and Rome and Greece and Soviet and Nazi, and we say to our hosts, hey, don't hate us. We're just like you. In fact, not only are we just like you, we're more Greek than you, Greeks. We're more Roman than you. We are more liberal than the most liberal people in America today. And we think that the more we assimilate and the more we come closer to our hosts and we show them we're just like them, the more they're going to love us. But the reality is the opposite. When we put out our light and we say we're just like you, they say, no, you're not. We have a tool that we've developed to show you you're not just like us. It's called anti-Semitism. And that's when anti-Semitism spikes. And then according to that script that I just mentioned, after anti-Semitism spikes, that empire falls. And unfortunately, based on that, we're not headed in a good direction in the Western world.
I saw a lot of this rising in 2016 when I was a news reporter and I hit the streets to talk to women that were wearing their pink pussy hats for the Women's March. And I came across a lot of Jewish women because there's a lot of Jewish people in Philadelphia. And I asked them what they thought about marching when all of the isms were in the mission statement except for anti-Semitism. Like they were against racism and against sexism, against transphobia, and in everything except for anti-Semitism. And the women that were marching were saying, well, I'm still a feminist. I still want to march. So I felt like that was the beginning. But what would you have said? I mean, how do you balance those identities, wanting to fight for rights but not being included as a Jew?
All those rights, by the way, originated in the Torah, just for the record, right? Every ism that we see today, and equality and liberalism and everything that we hold sacred today came from the Torah originally. So that's first of all. Second of all, this is not a new phenomenon. We have this in every generation. We always have Jews who, throw other Jews under the bus and side with the enemy. Obviously, in the Holocaust, we had the kapos. I mean, this is not a new thing. And so we have, unfortunately, Jews who are deeply confused, who reject, where they came from. But if you don't know where you came from, you don't know where you're going. And so, these people, it's very sad. I mean that not sarcastically. It's very, very sad. And they are deeply indoctrinated to, hate their own. And, I got to say, on a personal level, to me, I call them the as a Jew Jews, the ones that say, as a Jew, we want to bring Palestinians, like as a Jew. Those guys, the token Jews.
But that I see, and that it's really heartbreaking. But in 2016, we saw like a little bit of the rise in anti-Semitism on the right, and a lot of Jewish women were they were out because they were saying, I'm also a feminist, but it was like Linda Sarsour that was heading the Women's March that was excluding Jews. The second we saw a little bit of exclusion of the Jews, should the Jewish women have been like, I'm out? Because I think a lot of women, it took them until 2025 to see that. And they're like, oh, now I'm out 9 years later.
I mean, of course, ideally, yes, they should have, ducked out and said, this is not a movement that I can identify with. But again, I don't expect some of these people to do that. I think they've lost, their moral compass, and they're so deeply morally bankrupt that they don't even see that as a problem, which is, again, absurd. It's truly absurd, but that's the reality we live in. And the world just, lacks truth as a virtue. It's just not a virtue anymore. And furthermore, when someone does speak the truth, they are canceled. So the world is upside down. It's black is white, white is black, day is night, night is day. It's crazy. I mean, I'll tell you something, and excuse me for this is slightly controversial, and I hope I don't offend anyone, but when someone says to me, I want to be called he, even though I'm a she, fine, big deal, pronouns, what do I care? If they're going to be offended, I'll call them whatever the heck they want. Call them a pronoun, that doesn't cost anything. But when you teach an entire generation not to use critical thinking, what you're saying to them is, stop using your brain, don't believe what your eye sees. And so when it comes to pronouns, big deal. But when you teach an entire generation not to use critical thinking, down the road when there's a war between good and evil, they no longer are able to differentiate because you told them back then, don't use your brain. If you're seeing HD footage of people raping and murdering, it's okay. Let's make an equal sign between Israel that just wants to live in peace and psychotic lunatics who just dedicated their lives to destruction. Well, you told me yesterday not to think, so let's just make an equal sign.
Is it because we become so divisive with, Democrat and Republican? And if you're a Democrat, then you can't believe anything the Republicans are doing. And there was a time when Israel was a bipartisan issue. But now, since the Republicans are so pro-Israel, the Democrats have to be anti.
It's extremely sad how politics is playing out in America. I mean, nothing illustrates that better than Trump's speech the other day, how the Dems could not stand up for a kid with brain cancer. By the way, to be clear, Trump, he's an interesting dude. I don't know that I would marry him, or I don't know that I'd hire him to babysit my kids, but you don't elect a president to babysit your kids. You elect a president based on policy, and his policy has been clearly good both for Israel and the Jews, but also for America.
What do you do when you're politically homeless in America?
You want me to give you the real answer?
Please.
What should an American Jew do when he feels or she feels homeless politically? elal.com. That's what you should do. Get on a plane, come home.
What do you think is going to happen? What is the future of America or Europe, or we see the rise in anti-Semitism? What is the point? And I thought about this for years now, and as I'm talking to you from Israel right now, what's the tipping point where we have to say, I got to get out of here? I know I'm here because somebody said it's time to go.
I'll ask you the following question. If I told you 10 years ago, 10 years ago, we're having this conversation, and I say, listen, in 10 years from now, they're going to be anti-Semites in Congress, shuls, synagogues going to be vandalized, Jews are going to be beaten in the streets, academic institutions will not let Jews walk around freely. What will you do if that happens? And you would have said to me, there is no way that will ever happen in the United States of America. But if it does, I'm out of here. I won't wait, because that's not only the writing on the wall, that's the entire wall is covered with writing. That's what you'd have said to me. And so here we are with all those things having happened already and many, many more, and we're staying. So my question to you is, if you had a gun to your head, you'd be on a plane. So what constitutes a gun, if not these things? Because it seems to me that anything that would potentially constitute a gun has already happened in America. That's what it seems to me. What would you say, okay, this is too much? And when I ask my friends that question, they say, oh yeah, but the anti-Semitism doesn't affect me. What does that mean? You're waiting to be murdered so you can get on a plane? What does that mean, affect you? I don't understand. You drive in a car for 35 seconds and you see anti-Semites calling for the destruction of of the Israeli, of Israel, the Jewish state, and every single Jew worldwide, and you're telling me it doesn't affect you? So you have to wait till what? What has to happen? Because it seems to me that everything's already happened.
Which is why I'm talking to you from Israel right now. What about the people that say you have to stay and fight? You can't just abandon the cause.
You mean in Germany in 1930?
I mean, America 2025. I mean, you have
but that's the same thing my grandmother said.
Go up against them?
That's the same thing my grandmother said in Germany. That's the same thing the German Jews said. Well, I'm German. I'm not going to leave. I'm going to stay. Now, in hindsight, we know, but it's the same thing. I mean, no, it's not going to happen here, and I'm not going to abandon. I'm American. It's the same exact thing the German Jews said. So, okay, great. So you want to wait till what? I don't know. I mean, you want to be smart or you want to be alive? Okay, so you could stay there and flex your muscles and fight, and you're going to lose. How do I know that? Because look at history. It doesn't end well. It doesn't end well. Anytime the Jews are at the mercy of a foreign government, it did not end well. And you don't have to be a rocket scientist. Look, it's happening right before our eyes, and the trajectory is a very bad one. Trump might slow it down, but anti-Semitism never went back in the bag. It's only going to get worse. So What has to happen? It is crazy to me that there is a single Jew in America who's not is necessarily picking up and coming here right now because they have elderly parents and whatever it is. But there's the fact that there's a single Jew in America who still thinks that they're home in America and that they don't even have a concept, it's not even on their radar to come back to Israel, is staggering and mind-boggling to me. Like what has to happen? You're not home. You're foreign there. You're at the mercy of a government that couldn't care less about you. You see in the streets, Jews are being harassed and beaten, and the cops don't do anything. And we're like, oh yeah, it doesn't affect me. Wake up. It's crazy to me.
Well, historically, it's been a push and pull, right? So what's it going to look like to get over that hump?
I don't know what could possibly happen that hasn't already happened. Like, people said to me over the years, now it's just rhetoric. If it gets violent, it's gotten violent. Then people said to me, yeah, but it's just crazies on the street. It's not like, a lot of people. Now it's thousands, tens of thousands of people. Yeah, but it's not institutionalized. It's not like part of the government. It's just crazy people. Now it's institutionalized. Like I don't know what is left to happen in America. This is literally copy paste 1939 Germany. It is. And anybody who says otherwise, because it's uncomfortable to admit, is just wrong and lying. It's just not true. It's the exact same rhetoric, exact same actions. It started in academia. It's the same stuff, copy paste. I grew up my entire life struggling with the question, what were they thinking? What were the German Jews thinking? Why didn't they get out? I mean, when it was just rhetoric and Hitler was just speaking, they could say, okay, it was just words. But when they legislated the Nuremberg laws, what did they think was going to happen? Why didn't they get out? The answer is the same reason the American Jews are not getting out today.
Well, the difference was they didn't have Israel then.
Correct. It's true.
So if anybody needed to leave, they could, right?
There's no excuse. There's no excuse today. By the way, it's not just that there's no excuse. I don't know if you're a religious person or traditional or what. It doesn't make a difference what you are. But the fact of the matter is, the way I see it, God's like, listen, American Jews and Jews anywhere in the diaspora, you need to go home. And they're like, yeah, but, I don't know, Israel's hard to live in. Not anymore. Israel's paradise now. Yeah, but I'm comfortable in America. Not anymore, you're not. Like, he's literally doing anything he could possibly do for us to open our eyes and realize it's time to go home. What does he need to say? He sent us, an airline with nice big screens and beds that, he sent us nefesh b'nefesh that will hold your hand as you move to Israel. What could he possibly do to make it easier for Jews to come home? It's kind of like that famous story of the guy who gets on a roof in the storm and he says, God will save me. And they send him a boat. He doesn't get on the boat. They send him a helicopter. He doesn't get on the helicopter. And he dies. And he goes to God and says, why didn't you save me? God says, I didn't save you. I sent you a boat and a helicopter. One day we're going to go to God and say, God, we prayed for thousands of years for the ingathering of the exiles. Why didn't you bring us home? And God's going to say, I didn't bring you home. I sent you elal.com. I sent you nefesh b'nefesh. I made Israel a paradise. And that wasn't enough. So I brought anti-Semitism to reinforce that you're not home. You still didn't get on a plane. What do you want from me?
You have expressed concerns about getting factual information to Gen Z. What approaches do you think could be used to engage the so-called TikTok generation?
So the way I see it, there are three groups on the internet. There's our group. Obviously, people who don't need convincing, but do need reinforcing. They need more knowledge. And then there's the opposite group, who I call the Heil Hitler folks, who are just, I write them off. They're done. There's no talking to them. These people are completely indoctrinated. They don't care about facts, and they just hate Jews, period, full stop. Then there's the middle group, which is the majority, which are people with integrity. People who are willing to have a conversation. So what I found to be very helpful is, first of all, leave emotion out. Tell me about facts, but more importantly, ask questions. Don't dictate to me. Don't tell me there was never an Arab-Palestinian state, because I'll say there was. Instead, ask me, when was it established? Just tell me the history of the Arab-Palestinian state. What was the currency and who was the prime minister, right? You're telling me we occupied Gaza on October 6th and that's why October 7th happened? Please tell me what the disengagement was. I'm not telling you. Google it. What was the disengagement? Because if you Google it and you'll see that every Jew left Gaza in 2005 and there was not a single Jew in Gaza, all of a sudden your entire narrative of, we were occupying Gaza, you realize, wait a second, that's actually not true. So instead of dictating to someone, ask them questions, basic questions. Tell me, please, how it's possible that the hostages are being fed well and there's no food in Gaza. Which one is it? How is it possible that you're declaring from the river to the sea, aka erase Israel, and two-state solution? Which one is it, right? So ask questions. And if you're dealing with a person who has integrity and basic intelligence, they're going to then do some research and they'll realize that many of the things they believed were just factually inaccurate. And hopefully, again, if they have integrity, they'll start to research a little more and realize there's actually a lot of facts that they don't know, which completely changes their opinion on the conflict.
You're a tech guy, so what do you think the role is of social media? And did you get more involved in social media after October 7th, or were you always involved in it because of your
No, I was always involved in social media. I always had a large audience on social media. I mean, always, obviously I built it, but yeah, I had a large audience, but that audience multiplied tenfold since October 7th. I mean, I think I was at 40,000 followers on Twitter before. Now I'm at 170. My Israel content obviously resonates. But what's social media's role? Social media is the biggest megaphone the world has ever known. It comes with great responsibility, right? I think we know stories of, there was a story of a woman who boarded a plane, and before she got on the plane, she tweeted something which was clearly controversial, and when she got off the plane, she was canceled. She was done. Like, her career was over.
I remember this story. Yep, I remember what you're talking about.
So on the one hand, something like that could happen. On the other hand, there are stories of, that plane on the Hudson, that guy who tweeted that famous picture was an anonymous guy that no one ever heard of, and that picture went so viral, it had 90 million views before CNN knew there was a plane crash, right? So this is the largest megaphone the world has ever known, but it comes with great responsibility, and, it's easy to make a mistake, and you can't delete because the internet never forgets. So it's a very important role, and I think it's what is being used, unfortunately, by our enemies to spread absolute blood libels and to indoctrinate the youth of the Western world. And it's extremely sad to see. That when the youth is actually promoting bin Laden, you've lost your mind. And that's where we're at.
As a former journalist, it's really important to get it right. How do you make sure that you're 100% right when you put something out there?
I just don't put it out until I know that I'm 100% right. Right. So I'm getting information from many different sources, some of them formal sources from the Israeli government and the IDF. And when I get a piece of information, I cross-reference it as many times as I possibly can before posting it. And I'm actually very proud of the fact that with very few exceptions in this war, I've been 100% accurate. And thousands of people tell me that I am their source of news. So again, it's great responsibility, but I'm super duper careful. I mean, something happened last week where I sent a video of Muslim kids beating up a Jewish kid in the streets of LA. And I don't know what it was about the video, but something seemed not accurate, and I was sent it by 20 people. And trust me, if I had tweeted that article, it would have gone that video would have gone viral. But something rubbed me the wrong way, and I started to look into it, and sure enough, it was not Muslim kids, it was not a Jewish kid, it was just some punks on the street beating up a kid. So I'm very, very, very careful, and again, with very few exceptions, and even those exceptions, I wasn't wrong, I was just early. I tweeted or posted something that wasn't yet confirmed or verified, but maybe the only exception to that is that a couple of weeks ago, there was an incident where a few buses blew up in Israel, and there was that story that they planted bombs on buses, and I was told by a very reliable source that there was more to that story, but I could not mention my source, and so I tweeted and posted what really happened, and no one else reported that. So till now, we don't know if what I said was true or not true. So that might have been the only exception that I posted and tweeted something that wasn't confirmed. Until now, it wasn't confirmed. There's a gag order on it, but I still believe it's true, and what I was saying makes sense, and it was, again, from a reliable source. But maybe that might be the only time in this entire war where I tweeted something without reliable sources that can be verified behind what I was saying.
I've been to journalism seminars, and the rule of thumb is unless you took the video yourself or who took it, don't put it out there.
Especially in the era of AI.
Yeah, it's exactly. And so hard to verify. What advice would you give to people that want to speak up? I know that there are some people that are afraid or say they can't or say they're worried about their job. What would you say to those people?
I'd say look at history. I'd say now's not the time to keep quiet. I'd say ask yourself if you would have spoken up in the Holocaust when 6 million Jews were being butchered. If you would have spoken up then, it's time to speak up now. And, again, I get it. There are risks involved. There's no question about it. I'm not belittling those risks. But what's more important to you, your job or your moral compass, and what you're going to tell your grandkids when they hear what happened in the United States of America in 2025, and you're going to look at them and say, yeah, I was silent? It's a decision you'll regret for the rest of your life.
So give us some actual tips, because a lot of people are not maybe as adept at social media as you are. How can they kind of ease into it and just start standing up for the Jewish people, for fixing the news? Because some of these headlines are crazy that I see. Yeah,
I think people need to not overthink it. I think the beauty of social media is that you don't need to be an influencer to have a post go viral, right? If your content is good, it can go viral, right? All it takes is one person to share it, and now you've exited your echo chamber. You've accessed that person's followers. So again, there are endless examples of people who didn't have a lot of followers, but posted something that was so good and was so impactful that it went viral. So if you have thoughts and you have knowledge and you have opinions, share them. You really just never know. And even if it reaches 20 people or 50 people or 100 people, impacting 50 people's opinions is quite meaningful and impactful. So use your platform. There's no such thing as, my platform's too small. It's just not how social media works. One person shares it and you're out of your echo chamber.
As a marketing expert, can you explain to us the significance of social media and the importance? Because some people, we hear people talking about the number of followers, and it might sound like a vanity metric, but it's something that's real. Like it's not just a vanity metric. It's like people that might hear
Followers
your
are
voice.
followers are not a real metric. They're absolutely a vanity metric because you can buy followers. In fact, someone analyzed my Instagram today and blew my mind because apparently 20,000 of my 80,000 followers on Instagram are fake. They're bots. I have no idea where they came from. I never bought a follower in my life. But
How do you know that?
You know,
How do you find that?
they have some, I don't know, they have some analysis. I have no idea. But I don't think followers are a good indication of success on social media. I think something that may be a little bit more meaningful are engagements, right? In other words, if I have one follower and I tweet something and it has 100 replies, that's way more meaningful than how many followers I have. So that's one way to measure. Another way to measure is actual messages, DMs of people that say to you, you know, you changed my mind or you gave me another perspective. That's obviously the most meaningful. But follower count is really not a real metric because, again, it could be manipulated so easily.
So if you're talking about the people that are engaging with you, what about people that the free Palestines and the like hate comments that they DM you or put out there, or the diatribes that they write that is totally like, should you even be responding if somebody writes a thesis of lies?
Yeah, it's a good question. I got to say, my late brother, Ari, his opinion was engage with everyone. He would engage with people even if they weren't listening because his opinion was that person might not be listening, but other people are watching this dialogue from the sidelines and they need to know the truth. And that was his perspective on life in general, engage with everyone. Maybe I'm weaker than him. Maybe I don't know, but I do not subscribe to that. I got to tell you, many years ago, I went to meet Ben Shapiro and I asked him that question. I said, how do you deal with all the hate? And he laughed and he said, you think I read that stuff? I tweet and I mute. I don't read the replies. And I remember thinking to myself, that's crazy. It's social media. You're supposed to engage. But that's what I do now. In the war, I tweet and I mute. I don't read the replies. And then I get, messages in my inbox. And in the beginning of the war, the hate would drive me crazy and it would really anger me. It would ruin my day. Instead, I said to myself, let's flip this. Let's make it into a way that when I get these messages, it actually makes me smile. So what did I do? I set up a shortcut on my iPhone that anybody who sends me a hate message, it automatically replies to that person and says, thanks, sweetie. I've donated money to the IDF in your name. Zionists worldwide, thank you for your contribution. And they lose their minds. And I'm like, yes. So every time I get hate messages, I just enjoy it now.
It's just, you read it and you're like, okay, this is hateful. It's not like it's an automatic, like a word. Unless
No.
it's
I mean, it's
Palestine.
I read it and I reply back with that shortcut on my iPhone. I mean, it's endless. The hateful messages, the emails, the death threats. I mean, I'm going to Australia in a couple of months, and they are hiring 30 security guards. 30. It's like absurd. Absolutely. Who am I? I'm some random dude, but it's a scary thing. It's a very scary thing. I mean, the hate that I'm getting is not only online, it's offline too. I have people I no longer post when I'm traveling somewhere. It's very sad because it leads to a lot of lost opportunity. Many times I'll go somewhere. I was in Tampa, Florida like a month ago. And when I got back and then I announced where I was, I got endless people wrote me, I can't believe it. You were in my neighborhood. I didn't know. I can't do that. I can't post where I am because it's terrifying.
Which just shows you how dangerous this anti-Semitism is. Like,
Correct.
it's the synagogues that have the security guards. It's the influencers that can't say where they're going. And that is so sad.
Yeah, it's terrible. And that's the important point here. People think words are just words. They're not. Words lead to action, and words are dangerous, and words matter. And that starts all the way from using accurate terminology. Don't call it the West Bank. It's Judea and Samaria. And the reason the world calls it the West Bank is because Judea sounds an awful lot like the word Jew. And if you admit that it's called Judea, then you're admitting that Jews come from Israel and that we're indigenous to their land, to this land. So people they don't want to ruin their entire narrative. So it's called the West Bank. Don't call it the West Bank. Call it Judea and Samaria. Don't tell me there was a Palestinian state. There never was. Don't use just fake terminology that the world likes to use. Use accurate words. Words matter.
Right. What's it the West Bank of? It's the West Bank of Jordan.
It's ridiculous.
I think some people thought like there were times that they felt like, oh, Judea and Samaria sounded too religious. But a lot of people are going back to their Jewish roots and they're saying, with all this hate, I'm going to be more Jewy than ever. What advice would you give to people as they're encountering this hate?
They hate us anyway. You might as well embrace it, right? They hate us for who we are. At least be who you are. Right? If they're going to hate you for being the messengers of morality in the world, then be the messenger of morality in the world and own it. Own the light. We are a source of light in this world. Stop apologizing for it and own it. People are going to call you a supremacist. Let them call you whatever the hell they want. The Jewish people have been disproportionately valuable to Western civilization, and you could take any metric you want. And so if people are going to hate us for it, let them hate us. At least let's own it.
So give us one last bit of advice. What is our place in the world? What tips would you give to people that are trying to navigate this new online world? And how should we conduct ourselves? How should we interact with each other? And the hate is tough, man. The hate, I'm sure you know it more than anybody.
I know it. Yeah, I know it. Trust me, I know it. So you gotta develop thick skin. Resilience is a very important part of this game because you're gonna get hate, and you're gonna get hate no matter what you say. As long as you speak the truth, you're gonna get hate because again, truth is the most unpopular thing today. So you got to develop thick skin, that's for sure. But you got to speak the truth. You can't let the morally bankrupt, whatever. I don't want to give names and categories, but you can't let them question your morality. Your moral clarity is real, and don't let anyone change that, and own the truth. Stop being embarrassed to speak the truth. Stop apologizing. Own who you are and speak up, because again, there's no option to sit this one out. If you're not supporting Israel, you're supporting Hamas. Straight up. There's only two options here. So now's not the time to sit on the side. Speak up.
Tell me what you think about this, because I kind of get the feeling that sometimes people don't want to say the truth because it sounds so crazy, even though the Palestinians say crazy things, to repeat it, to say, hey guys, when you scream from the river to the sea, it means kill the Jews. Like, that sounds so outlandish that it's like, wow, that's a crazy thing to say. And maybe that's why people shy away from it.
Yeah, I mean, it could be, but again, that's a perfect example. Don't come at me and say that's crazy. Go open a map. What river and what sea? You're talking about one side of Israel to the other. You are erasing Israel. What do you plan on doing with the people who live in Israel? 10 million people live in Israel. Let's say 7 million of them are Jews. What do you want to do with them? Are we going to send them on a picnic in the Bahamas? What are you going to do with them? You want to kill them. That's what the Palestinians say. It says it in their charter. Like, literally, the Palestinian Liberation Organization. What were they liberating? There was no occupation back then. What were they liberating? They say it. Go read their charter. All of Israel. Murder as many Jews as possible. That's what they did on October 7th. That's what the Fatah's about. That's what Hamas is about. Murdering Jews. They don't want a state. Are you kidding me? They had a state. They had a state when we had a state. In 1947, they were given a state. Israel accepted, they rejected, and they attacked. And that's been the story since then. And the reason Israel exists today, as it does in a flourishing, thriving country, is because we focused our energies on building a state. And the reason there's no Palestinian state is because they focus their energies on destroying a state. They have no positive identity. Their entire identity is destroy Israel. Well, what do you expect? What do you expect them to look like? Of course, they have no, cities and infrastructure. They're taking all that money and building tunnels instead of building schools and bomb shelters, because all they want to do is murder as many Jews as possible. This isn't me. You think it's outlandish to say that? Go read their charter. They say it, not me.
What do you want to say to the anti-Zionists?
That if you're an anti-Zionist, just understand what you're saying. You're saying that in a world of 57 or 54 Muslim countries and endless Christian countries, one Jewish country is too much for you. The Jews don't deserve a safe haven after they're butchered and massacred in Europe. They don't deserve a safe haven, and they don't deserve to go back to their eternal homeland where they were indigenous. What you're saying is that Jews deserve to die. And therefore, if you're anti-Zionism, you are anti-Jewish, aka anti-Semite. You're an anti-Semite. There's no anti-Zionist, not anti-Semitic. Those two things cannot be separated. Jews have prayed to Zion, which is Jerusalem, for thousands of years. And you're saying to me, I'm anti-Zion, I'm anti-Jews going home to their homeland, but I'm not anti-Jewish? What are you even saying? So this is like an artificial differentiation. Like, oh, I'm anti-Zionist. There's no such thing. You're an anti-Zionist, you're an anti-Semite.
Do you think that people know what they're saying, or they don't understand, or they're just following it's like the same question I asked you before.
Yeah,
like,
I think
are they
many people.
Ignorant?
Yeah, many, I don't know how to quantify it, but many, I would say millions and millions of people out there are getting their opinions from some ridiculous video on TikTok. And that person who produced that video is getting his or her opinion from another video on TikTok, and it just keeps going. And someone back there just made this up. Again, I want to be very clear. We can debate this conflict. We can debate many things, but you can't tell me there was an Arab-Palestinian state. You can't see that because it didn't exist, right? So someone at some point made up some ridiculous lie, and then it just dominoed, and people just built on that lie. And it's all based on the original lie, the most grandiose lie, which is the Palestinian identity. There is no Palestinian. Yasser Arafat, the founder of the Palestinian people, was born in Cairo. He was Egyptian. Yeah. There's no Palestinian Arab people. There's Palestine, which was Israel before 1948. There's no debating this. So if you don't believe that, you're believing lies. There's no other way to look at it.
So how do you fight the echo chamber?
How do you fight the echo chamber? You speak up, because again, when you speak up and you share meaningful things, people will share them, and you've exited your echo chamber. That's it. Just speak up. The answer to almost every question is speak up. This is not the time to sit it out. This is a war not between civilizations. This is a war between civilization and barbarism, and you cannot afford not to take sides.
Is there anything else you want to add that I haven't asked you?
We will dance again, and Am Yisrael Chai is a very real thing. It's not a nice empty phrase or a nice song. It's a historical reality, and I can prove that to you if you don't believe me. Open your phone and try to find any of your Babylonian friends, because they don't exist. all of these empires are gone, and we're here because Am Yisrael Chai is a historical reality, and we will dance again, just like we dance in every one of our holidays. Purim, which was the end of the Jewish people, Hanukkah, which is a war we were not going to win, Passover, which was 210 years of backbreaking slavery, and today we celebrate. So we will dance again.
Hillel Fuld, thank you so much. Your website is hillelfuld.com. What other social media outlets should we follow you on?
Anywhere. I'm most active on X at Hillel Fuld, Hilz, like zebra, Fuld, but I'm active on Facebook and LinkedIn and Instagram and TikTok and YouTube. I'm everywhere. You could just follow me anywhere.
And you have to follow him. Anybody who's watching this, I'll put some links in the description because his takes are really refreshing. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate you taking the time to chat with me and with my channel.
If you made it this far in the video, it means you must have enjoyed the conversation. Please support my channel by hitting subscribe and also by watching additional videos right here. Thank you so much.